everyone, and welcome to another episode of Recycled Content, a podcast of the Association of Plastic Recyclers, an international nonprofit and the only North American organization focused exclusively on improving recycling for plastics. I'm Kara Pochiro, and I'll be your host today. As we often talk about on this podcast, tackling plastic waste is a major environmental challenge that requires comprehensive solutions and participation from everyone. Recycling is not the first step or the only solution, but part of an extensive system of tools and strategies to create a circular economy. Progress is being made slowly but surely, but of course, there's still much work to be done to improve recycling. We've all seen the negative and often misleading headlines that attack the efficacy of plastic recycling and even the existence of recycling. This can lead to doubt that the system works and can even cause people to just simply throw their recyclables in the trash rather than the recycling bin. But seeing is believing, and that's why APR is launching Recycling in Action Month this May. And today we'll be talking about this initiative, which includes material recovery facilities, or MRFs, as well as plastic recycling facilities across the U.S., opening their doors for tours and information sessions to showcase what happens after recyclables are picked up from the curb all throughout the month of May. Pia Baker is leading the Recycling in Action initiative at APR, so we are pleased to have her join us today. As APR's Director of Marketing, she focuses on strategy and communications for APR programs to help members achieve their goals and positively impact the recycling system. Pia has over 20 years of brand experience, previously leading sustainability marketing for Nestle Waters North America, in addition to leading marketing teams at Timex, Unilever, and Charles Schwab. She has an MBA from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and a BA from Brown University. When she's not working, she loves to spend as much time as possible outdoors with her family, running, skiing, hiking, or beaching, all things I like to do too. Welcome, Pia.
Thanks, Kara. I'm excited to finally be on your podcast.
Yes, always nice to have my APR colleagues join me on the podcast. And something that I often like to ask people before we dive into our topic, I mentioned that you focused on sustainability at Nestle and now, of course, at APR. But what initially sparked your interest in sustainability and recycling?
Yeah, sure. Well, career-wise, I actually started in marketing first. Out of college, one of my first jobs, I kind of landed in a marketing role. And what I really loved about marketing was really getting inside the hearts and minds of consumers and trying to figure out what people wanted, what they needed. I wanted to understand what motivated them and then connect the dots to my brands or my products. And I loved that. I went back and got my MBA, and I did it for another 10 years at Unilever and Timex. And then when I moved over to Nestle, my very first role was in kind of more of a community role. So it was a brand-led role, but we were working with a local community. And I really fell in love with that. It felt a little bit more meaningful than what I had been doing prior to that. And that expanded to really encompass sustainability in general, which had always been something I was personally interested in. You said in my bio, like, I'm just an outdoorsy person. I love to be outdoors, and I've always cared about the environment. And actually linking sustainability into my job really brought a lot more meaning. And the way I started to think about marketing wasn't just connecting the dots between what people wanted and what brands or products could deliver, but this third lever of what the world needed. And thinking about all three of those things together really clicked for me. And I went on to develop the sustainability marketing program at Nestle and worked on initiatives like a recycling roadmap to figure out how we could transition our packaging to recycled plastic. I worked on a lot of educational campaigns to engage our audience when it came to how to recycle our products, a lot of community engagement, getting waters to community that needed it. To me, it just added a lot more meaning. And now here I am at APR. I love this new role because I'm working with people who know so much about recycling. And really my job is, how can I make sure all of our members and all the people in the industry really know about the great programs we have available, take advantage of those programs, really at the end of the day that we can recycle more plastic.
Sounds great. And sounds like you were a perfect fit for APR right from the start. I know you mentioned you worked at Nestle Waters, who is a longtime APR member. And I will say that one of your colleagues highly praised you and suggested that we reach out to you. So it was a great fit. Back to Recycling in Action, which is an initiative that you are in charge of at APR and that you came up with. And in the intro, I talked about negative and often misleading information about recycling that's often in the media. And this is kind of where we wanted to come up with a program that would really show recycling in action, hence the title of this initiative. Before we dive into the details of the program, what are some of the more common myths that you see or that you read about that you think can lead people to actually stop recycling?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of them. And I'm sure you know, Kara, being in this industry, working in the world of recycling, you go on vacation, you go to a soccer game, and suddenly, as soon as people hear, they start peppering you with questions. There is a lot of confusion out there. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of them. I mean, at a high level, one of the first ones I was working on, even back at my Nestle Waters days, was this idea that people heard, oh my gosh, we used to ship all of our recycled plastics to China, and now they're not taking it anymore. That means that I'm putting all this recycled plastic in my bin, but there's no place for it to go. It's just going to get landfilled. I heard that a lot. I saw some pretty reputable media outlets kind of talking about this story, which was surprising. I guess that's one of the misleading headlines. And I'd say it's not true. We did used to ship some of our harder to recycle plastics to China, and that did stop. But the vast majority of plastics that are captured here in the U.S. through recycling, 93% of them are actually processed here in North America. We do have a large plastic recycling infrastructure here in the U.S., and we have been growing how much we're capturing and recycling every year. So I guess that would be one of the first misconceptions that I would rule out. The next one, you and I have talked about this one a lot. It's a statistic that often goes into headlines. It seems to come up almost every year. A new headline will come out with it. Something along the lines of less than 10% of plastic gets recycled. And what is difficult about this one is that when people hear that, what they think is less than 10% of what I put in my bin gets recycled. It's just interpreted that way. It's very confusing. I've heard a lot of senior people repeat it that way. And that, again, is not true. That statistic of less than 10% of plastic gets recycled is based on all plastic produced. We're talking about auto parts and carpet and appliances and medical devices. It is the vast universe of anything that uses plastic. When we're talking about plastic that most people are recycling in their home, that's mostly packaging. Think about your bottles, your laundry jugs, your milk cartons. When you put those in the bin, the vast majority of those recyclable plastics that you put in your bin will get recycled. I think that one is a pretty scary statistic, which makes people feel that all their efforts are in vain and they want to stop recycling. And that worries me. I definitely would want people to know what that statistic means and what it doesn't mean. I guess two other quick ones I'd say, and this is a personal one because I live in a community where I have the same hauler that comes to pick up my trash and recycling. And I've had several people reach out to me with this question saying, hey, I separate my recyclables from my trash, but then on Wednesday the truck comes and they throw them all into the same truck and drive away. What's the point? If you're in that situation, if you've seen your hauler do that, I just advise people to actually stand behind the truck and look at it. Often there's a dividing line and it looks like they're throwing it all in, but recyclables is going on the left and trash is going on the right. And then another one that we have seen come up a lot lately is this idea of putting trackers into bags of recyclable plastic and saying, is it really making it where it's supposed to make it? And one of the challenges of this is that when you put a metal air tag onto a plastic bottle, if the MRF and the plastic recycling process is working correctly, that plastic bottle will actually not make it into the plastic stream because metal is a contaminant when it comes to the plastic recycling stream and it will get ejected. That's not often talked about in these studies. They're kind of exposés saying, see, this bag of plastic never made it till the end, but there is an inherent flaw in that type of research.
Absolutely. Lots of myths out there, and we're always working to correct the record on plastic recycling at APR. We have lots of content on our website that I encourage you to check out. this podcast, our blog. We have a How Recycling Works section. But of course, seeing is believing, and we want people to see recycling firsthand for themselves. This is kind of where we came up with Recycling in Action. We launched this program to dispel those myths and allow the public to see recycling in action for themselves. Tell us about the program.
Yeah, and I will just reiterate, I know my first time that I actually went to see a MRF and saw recycling in action, it really was mind-blowing. So I went to Sims, which is now Balcones in Brooklyn. Our mutual friend from Nestle Waters took me there, and it was amazing, mainly because I saw the sheer volume of material that was coming across barges, getting dumped onto the tipping floor, and then going through this maze of conveyor belts and getting sorted down to the individual material. And I just couldn't help thinking, if the recycling facility did not exist, was all of this going to go into the landfill? And it's motivating for someone. Like, if you do your job of putting your plastic into the recycling bin and it will actually get recycled, that's an important message for people to hear because it has an impact. And I will just say one other thing. We recently at APR, we're looking at the numbers, and our most recent data shows us that in 2022, we recycled in the U.S. 5 billion pounds of plastic. That's a huge number. It's a little bit hard to get your head around. I tried to break it down into something that made more sense. And what that is actually the equivalent of is 340 18-wheeler trucks a day filled with plastic being diverted from landfills that are actually going to go back into new products and not in the landfill. So to me, that's powerful. Again, I'm saying all this to say, seeing it with your own eyes, seeing what is happening reinforces the behavior that we want to see all people across the U.S. take, and that is recycle their plastic. The goal of this program is that during the month of May, as many MRFs and plastic recyclers as possible open their doors to the public and invite people in to come and see a tour, learn about the process, see how materials are separated, how they're collected, baled, how they move on to the next process, what they turn into in the end when they're recycled into a new product. And what we're doing at APR is we've kind of orchestrated the program. We've named it. We have a landing page. You can go on and see a map of all the different facilities across the U.S., click through and get to a registration link. We're trying to spread the word at a high level. And then all of these facilities have signed up to give the tours, and they're doing local outreach as well to invite their community members to come in and see, how does recycling work in your neighborhood, in your community? Because of course, all of us who are in the recycling world knows it varies from community to community. So it's important for everybody to see how it works in their own individual community. The goal of it is to be pretty turnkey. If you are a MRF or a recycler that already gives tours, it should be pretty simple. Keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to list you on our website. But it's our pilot year. This is the first year we're doing it. We have about 35 facilities across the U.S. that are signed up, 20 states, from Massachusetts to Washington State, from Minnesota down to Texas, some pretty good coverage across the U.S. The goal is that if it goes well this year, if people learn something, they enjoy it, that this will become an annual event. And ideally, I would love in 5-10 years, when May rolls around, people think, hey, it's recycling month. It's time to go check out the recycling facility near me.
Right. We hope to see it just continue to grow every year. We've been pleased, even in the short amount of time since we kind of put out our formal announcement some time back, that a lot of different organizations have signed up. As you mentioned, a lot of MRFs and plastic reclaimers already provide tours, and maybe if you're listening to this podcast today and you're interested in a tour, again, you can go to our website. We'll talk about that more at the end of the podcast. But even if you don't see one in your area, we encourage you to, reach out to your local MRF or your recycler and just see if they also provide tours. Lots of opportunities there. Tell us about some of those companies and the locations. You talked about how they're across a wide variety of states. Tell us more about some of the specific companies that have signed up, and then how you can find more information.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, we had great response when we first put this idea out. First of all, I want to thank the APR members who immediately raised their hands saying, absolutely, I support this, I'll join this. Several of our MRF members, including UN, Republic, Balcones, Casella, and Eureka, all immediately signed up. many of them with multiple facilities. That was huge. That allowed us to say, okay, this idea has legs. It got us off the ground. That was great. We also have a couple plastic reclaimers. Originally this was about the MRFs, the kind of the initial sorting process, but we had some plastic reclaimers that said, we want to give tours. We want to show people how that material actually is turned into new pellet or plate. I want to call out and thank KW and PureCycle, two of our members who raised their hands and said, we want to get involved as well. And then we partnered actually with SWANA, another industry organization who heard about the program, and they're connected to many different municipal MRFs that are a little bit outside of APR's membership. And they helped us reach out, and we heard from so many smaller local MRFs that were really excited to join. Like you said, many of them were doing tours already, but they wanted to be part of the biggest movement. We actually have a MRF that's on a small island sign up to do the tours because they want their residents to actually come to this small facility and drop off the material right in front of the MRF, but they want them to see what happens inside the building after it's dropped off, how it's sorted and organized and bundled. I think that organizations across the U.S. that are in the recycling world are feeling this concern that recycling feels a little muddy to some people, and they want their communities to see exactly what's happening. It's a benefit we have being in the recycling world, but it's really important to share it with neighbors and local communities. Again, I encourage people to go check out the website. You can go to recyclinginaction.org, and there you'll see a map of all of our locations, and we can keep adding. If anybody is listening that is a MRF that's not signed up and you want to give tours in May, certainly reach out and we can try to get you included.
Definitely. And also, as you mentioned, we do have plastic reclaimers who are involved as well. If you are a reclaimer, feel free to reach out too. You can go visit a MRF to see how all of the different recyclables are sorted and then what happens after that at the reclaimers. Different steps of the process can be witnessed during Recycling in Action Month. We mentioned that, of course, we want this program to keep going and keep growing. And like you said, for people to say, oh, it's May, it's Recycling in Action Month. What else do you hope to see as a result of this program?
First and foremost, I just want as many people to actually take a tour and see recycling with their own eyes. That's kind of the basics of what we're trying to do. I think by seeing how recycling works, it might help them become better recyclers. You and I both know from being on these recycling tours, you can see why contamination is a problem and what some of the pitfalls are, as well as what you want to be doing right. I mean, reminding people not to put plastic bags in their curbside bin, when you see it with your own eye that people are up there cutting with knives, it's dangerous. It slows everything down to get those bags out of the machinery. It will make you think twice about throwing a plastic bag into your recycling bin. Becoming better recyclers is definitely an initiative as well. And I want them to believe in the process, like we said at the start. I think confidence has dropped, which leads to lower participation. So I hope that seeing it helps them believe that it's actually happening and they get the confidence. And at the end of the day, the ideal would be to get some recycling evangelists out there. Like, how cool would it be if we had a bunch of people who did this tour and then they went to a party the next weekend and told their friends about it and said, this is amazing, you should go see it. Like, nothing spreads the word better than word of mouth from someone you trust. It's something that we can't do at APR that headlines don't even do. Like, when you hear it from somebody you know, it really makes a difference. I would love to get some more recycling evangelists out there.
Yes, I like that term. I'd love to get more recycling evangelists out there too. Can't just be us in the recycling industry always talking about it. It'd be great to have more people, the general public, who have had a chance to take a tour and really, as we keep saying, seeing is believing. Another important audience that we really want to have during Recycling in Action Month are policymakers. We are hoping to have policymakers get a chance to attend a tour as well. And we're even organizing another event specifically focused on bringing policymakers to a MRF to see how all the recyclables are sorted and everything that happens at a MRF before they can then go on to a reclaimer. Why is it so important that we target this audience as well? Why do we want those policymakers to take a tour as well?
Absolutely. It's a good point. So I've talked a lot about kind of the general public and how important it is for them to see recycling, but another very important audience is policymakers. And there is a lot of policy being discussed and made right now about recycling, which is important because we all know there's a lot of opportunities to improve recycling right now. But we want the policy to be smart policy that makes sense, that can be implemented in a way that will actually help the recycling process improve. And we know, policymakers have a lot on their plate. They're dealing with a ton of different things. They're not going to be naturally recycling experts. Similar to the general public, we want them to come in and see with their own eyes what is working and actually listen to a MRF or a recycler talk about the challenges that they're facing. It really, again, is that firsthand experience that can be really influential. We are working with the Recycling Partnership, and we're doing a specific tour in Maryland during the month of May, where we're inviting congressional staffers to come and see the recycling process and have a conversation about it. So I think all of that is super important to make sure we get the right policy, and not just from an environmental perspective. Especially right now, it's important to understand the economic impact of recycling. The recycling world drives hundreds of thousands of jobs in the U.S. and over $1 billion in tax revenues, especially right now for our policymakers that are trying to figure out how to grow, how to support, how to improve recycling. We want them to see the economic impact as well.
Really glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people don't realize that, because recycling does require a voluntary effort. People have to put the recyclables in the bin that they can then get recycled. But it is a business and a driver for the economy that creates a lot of jobs and has a really big economic impact. That's always important to remember too. If you're listening today and you are unable to attend a tour, I did mention that we have a lot of resources available on the APR website where you can learn more about recycling. Pia, tell us a little bit more about some of the stuff people can check out on our website to learn more about recycling.
First of all, if you want to learn more about the program, go to recyclinginaction.org. That will give you all the details that I've been talking about. But otherwise, on the APR site, you mentioned as well, this is a relatively new tab that we've added called How Recycling Works. We've got a lot of great information about the environmental and the economic impact of recycling. Got the recycling process where you can kind of follow the process of how recycling plastic works with some videos in there and the step glossary in there. If you are at all confused about any terms when it comes to recycling, you can check it out on our glossary. We have podcasts and webinars and blogs. I know, Kara, you did a great podcast with Eureka recently, who's one of the MRFs that's participating in this tour, and they talked about the recycling process and the importance of that. So yeah, plenty of resources on our website. Lots of good stuff if you want to educate yourself, or if you're looking for something to share with a colleague in your organization to help them understand the recycling process.
Yes, lots of great resources available on the website. Before I say goodbye to Pia, any last thoughts about recycling in action? Any last messages that you want to get out there?
Yeah, I mean, the one other thing I'd say for anybody listening to this, if you're an organization that uses plastic in packaging or makes plastic packaging and you want to better understand the recycling process so that you can make sure your packaging is recyclable, I highly recommend checking out APR's design training session. So it's led by Kurt Cozart, our chief operating officer, who's had over 30 years of experience building recycling plants. He is the guy to get to know this information from. And he can do custom sessions for companies where he comes and takes your whole company through the recycling process and design for recycling. Or you can do a training and tour event where you can send one or two people from your company to an event. And we actually have one next week, which is getting pretty close, but we do schedule them a couple times a year where it's a classroom learning followed by a tour of a recycling facility. You really get to apply what you've learned sitting in the classroom and actually see it live. And they're great sessions. APR design training, highly recommend it.
Another great in-person event that APR will be hosting. And of course, just one last reminder to please sign up for a tour during the month of May for APR's inaugural Recycling in Action Month. We are really excited about this program. Thanks so much to Pia for joining us today, and thanks to everyone for listening. For more information about Recycling in Action, other programs, as well as general information about plastic recycling, visit the APR website at plasticsrecycling.org. Check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X at APR Recycles. And one last reminder, we do want to hear from you. Feel free to contact APR at info@plasticsrecycling.org for more information or to give us suggestions for topics that you might want to hear about on this podcast. You can find recycled content wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review.
This podcast was recorded in the studios of
Policy Resolution Group, Washington, D.C.